After our study last week of seeing Jesus sending out the 12 apostles in verses 7 through 13 of Mark chapter 6, we're picking up after the story of John the Baptist. That they were evidently excited as they came back to talk to Jesus, and they were giving him the report of what was going on. And evidently they had been so busy doing this work. We're not told how long it took them, how long they were gone, but it's more than likely it was more than just a day. It wasn't just an overnight trip. While Jesus didn't go with them, he was actively teaching as well. And so we're picking up in verse 31, and there's interesting things that stuck out to me preparing for this that I hope that you will see the excitement of this passage that we have heard so many times over the feeding of the 5,000. But start out verse 31. Jesus says to them, "Come away by yourselves to a desolate place and rest a while." For many were coming and going, and they had no leisure even to eat. Have you ever found yourself so busy that you weren't even able to eat? That you have been going and doing and working so hard that you just didn't have time to eat? I'm not saying that you weren't hungry or you just forgot. It's you literally were on your feet running and going so much you didn't even have time to stop for a saltine cracker. That's what was going on here. The people were coming and they were going the entire time, and there was just simply no time for a break to rest your feet. Not only are you starving, but you're utterly exhausted. Oh, and you're outside of the city. There's no Tootin' Totems. There's no Buc-ee's, no McDonald's. There's not even a Waffle House out here. We're just stuck in the middle of nowhere. And knowing that everyone was there, Jesus decided it was time. Yeah. Jesus decided it was time that they get away for a little bit to go get some rest, just to relax. Look at verses 32 and 33. And they went away in the boat to a desolate place by themselves. Now many saw them going and recognized them, and they ran there on foot from all the towns and got there ahead of them. Now, in fact, just like it always is, I'm getting away, I'm just relaxing, I'm unwinding, and lo and behold, the crowd is already there before you get there. I stopped doing it. My wife said it was pointless to even did it to begin with. But we would go on vacation. Said, okay, ministry stops. I'm not a pastor, I'm not a preacher. I am just your husband. We're not talking anything church related. And what inevitably happens is we'll be at a restaurant. We were at Twisted Root in San Angelo. And I told her several times, no church, no nothing. We sit down. We started talking. Somehow we got into a conversation with, what was it, our waiter at that time? A waiter. And about 30 minutes later, we were done having church. There. We've gone to other places. Okay, it's just us. And it still happens. So I just finally gave up even trying. But you do your best to get away. Just a break. Just to relax. Just to catch your breath. Maybe fix, the bowls that we used to have. That was your potato salad bowl, your ice cream bowl, your popcorn bowl, your soaking your feet bowl. I don't know how we ever got by with that. The same bowl that we ate out of is the exact same bowl that last night you were soaking your sore feet in. But you get those bowls. No, these are big bowls. But even that works too. But you want that rest just to, kind of like it was yesterday when we all got home from working up here. The only thing you wanted to do was just get in the AC, sit down, relax, and don't do nothing. Because we were tired, we were worn out. But once again, no rest for the weary. And Jesus sits here, and just like we've seen several times before, he sees the people. He cares for the people. And notice what it says in verse 34. Not only did he see the people, he had compassion on them. But notice right in the middle of verse 34 what he says. Why he had that compassion. Because they were like sheep without a shepherd. They were lost. They were scattered everywhere. If we're truly going to be like Jesus, to really be the hands and feet of the Master, then we must do something. If we want to be able to see the church expand and grow, we must have compassion for the wandering and the lost sheep. We must have compassion for the lost and wandering sheep. The world around us is completely lost. We talked about this a few weeks ago when we looked at the account of John the Baptist with King Herod. But just this week, this played out in Massachusetts. Governor Maura Healey signed a bill allowing abortions to be legal in the state up to the very point of birth. This means that from the point of knowing that you're pregnant until, this is exactly how this bill is worded, that as the head begins to crown, they stop the pushing and insert a tube into the base of the skull and suck the brain out and then let the baby be born. The governor of Massachusetts, surrounded by women, signed that into law, and the women around hooped and hollered and cheered and clapped their hands. We live in a world that are lost sheep wandering around like chickens with their heads cut off. It's now legal to do that. We read about it in the Minor Prophets. How this world just falls apart when we don't do what God says. When we're not following His rules, His regulations. You see this mentioned in the book of Judges. You see it in the first chapter of Romans. Everyone was doing what was right in their own sight. No one cares about living according to the Bible. Nobody cares about God anymore. This week you had two former professional NBA players that decided all of a sudden they were going to identify as women so that they could enter into the WNBA, so that they could, quote, both of them said the same thing, so we can dominate the league. And you have a lot of people that are applauding their decision to come out. Not necessarily to play in the WNBA, but that they were able to come out. There were several Texas Tech student organizations that formed a petition to remove the chancellor because he is enforcing a law that was passed by Governor Greg Abbott that eliminates the woke culture the LGBTQIA plus indoctrinations. That we're not going to teach gender identity. We're not going to teach gender identifying. We're not going to do all of this kind of stuff. We're going to teach what should have been taught all along. We're going to teach you math. We're going to teach you sciences. Science being what has already been proven, not what somebody just invented on their own. We're going to teach you normal stuff, intelligent stuff, not you could be whatever you want to be this week. And so now you have students that are petitioning to have him removed. Pop singer Olivia Rodrigo has recently made headlines by being honored by Planned Parenthood for her advocacy and outspoken support. She has used her recent concerts to raise tons of money explicitly earmarked for reproductive health organizations, all supported by Planned Parenthood. I'm all for having reproductive health programs. Nothing wrong with that. But when it is specifically sponsored by Planned Parenthood, there's a problem, because the creator and founder of Planned Parenthood, and she gave a speech about it. It's several places on their website. Their main goal, first and foremost, is to promote the free and accessible need for abortions at all costs. Certainly, we live in a culture that have a lot of sheep that are lost and wandering. And they turn to every which direction. They turn to the media. We talked about it in the prayer time with the social media. You talk to your friends. Turn to education. We know how warped the education system is. Talked about it a couple of weeks ago, where it's now being taught in some first and second grade classes that it is okay for you to masturbate at that age. That by fifth grade, third grade, it is standard curriculum to have a book. I have two moms, I have two dads, and that's okay. Which is hilarious, because I saw a video, this little baby that was adopted by two gay men. One is named Daddy, one is named Poppy. And the dad is holding the baby. Baby can't be more than 7, 8 months old at most. It's like, who do you want? Daddy or Poppy? Mama. No, that's not right. Do you want Daddy or Poppy? Mama. And the baby starts crying. A baby knows that ain't right. But this is the culture that we live in. We are so far off center that we truly are a people without a shepherd. And that's where we continue looking. Look at verses 34 through 36. When he went ashore, he saw a great crowd, and he had compassion on them, because they were like sheep without a shepherd, and he began to teach them many things. And when it grew late, his disciples came to him and said, "This is a desolate place, and the hour is now late. Send them away to go into the surrounding countryside and villages to buy themselves something to eat." Jesus began teaching and proclaiming to them the truth about life, about faith, just as he's done before. And we'll see, starting with chapter 7 on, he begins teaching about everyday life. So far, we've seen a lot of miracles. We've seen a little bit of teaching. But starting with 7, we start hammering in on this. You've heard this, but this is what it is. This is how you're supposed to live. This is how you're supposed to act. This is what you're supposed to do. He was shepherding the lost sheep. And that's exactly what you and I are supposed to do. That we are supposed to shepherd those that are under us. There are people around us every day that come into contact with us that we should be pointing them to the truth. You saw the death reports of the suicides. They are increasingly and alarmingly upticking. Instead of just coming out and bashing them and just being done with it, we should come alongside with the parents, with the family, loving on them, letting them know, even in the midst of this chaos, even in the midst of this pain and suffering, you have a God who loves you, who cares about you. And He's the only one who can bring you comfort. He's the only one that can find hope in this darkness that you're dealing with. We need to speak the truth, not run away from it. But notice where they are at. Notice where they're at this time. They're in a desolate place. Desolate doesn't mean they're like imposing, or they're out on some back country road in between two major towns. Desolate means that it's somewhere miles away from anything and everything. Let me plop you down in the Sahara Desert. Good luck. There you go. Use a telescope and you're not going to see anything but desert. It's going to be several miles journey to the next town. And remember, they don't have cars. The Harley hadn't been invented yet. All they got is the Yabba Do It, let's go on our feet.
Sorry,
It's going to take time to get to town. Oh, and by the way, it's late. It's late. So they may or may not have even been able to get to town by the end of the day before everything closed up. And this is where the scripture flips. The whole story, the whole scenario, the whole message turns right here. Now, there is nothing wrong with what the apostles asked Jesus about. They said, send these people away so they can get food. They're being kind. They're being compassionate. If I kept you here, I'm not going to, but if I kept you here from the time we started the service till, let's say, 8, 9 o'clock tonight, and I'm preaching that entire time, like I said, I'm not going to. But if we had the service that long, y'all are going to be hungry by the time I'm done. You're going to be starving. So, you're going to want food. Remember, the disciples were tired. Jesus was tired. They crossed the river. It's about 7 miles to get across the river from where they were. Well, not a river, but it's a lake. Get across the lake, and the people are right there. So Jesus he had a 7-mile break. But nowhere here does it say that they had food in the boat. Nowhere does it say that they had a glass of iced tea to drink in the boat. They got in the boat to get away from the crowd, and they got off the boat into the crowd. They're hungry. They're tired. And if they hadn't eaten before they got into the boat, probably it means they didn't bring any food with them to eat off the boat. We know this in just a little bit because they don't have any food. So it's no big deal for them to say, Jesus, we need to send these people home so they can eat. They're hungry. They're tired. You need a rest. And then Jesus says something really awkward. Verse 37. But he answered them, you give them something to eat. You give them something to eat. Imagine the apostles' reaction to that. Can't you just see their jaws drop open? What? They're shaking their heads, scratching themselves, thinking, all right, Jesus, you've been out in the sun way too long. Your brain cells are getting fried. You remember the commercial with the frying pan and the 2 eggs? This is your brain, and you hear it sizzling. That's what's going on upstairs. You're 1 Fruit Loop short of a bowl of cereal. We know they're stunned because look at verse 37. Verse 37. Oh. Their response was, and they said to him, shall we go and buy 200 denarii worth of bread and give it to them to eat? Yeah. Jesus, are you having a heat stroke? Are you okay? Did the sun bake your brain? There's no possible way we could ever come up with that much food. And with what money? 200 denarii, I looked it up, today is worth about $16,000 to $20,000. Okay, these are fishermen that left their business to wander around in the desert with Jesus. We're about 1.5 years, the late half of that second year of Jesus' earthly ministry. So they've gone 1.5 years without pay. Where are they going to come up with that much money? Just curious, does anyone here today have that much money so that we can have a picnic after church? No, I didn't think so either. That was a dumb question for me to ask you if you had that much money. That's how the apostles felt when Jesus told them, you go give them something. No. That's an absurd request. But look what happens next. So how are we going to do this? You got 200 denarii that we can go to? Jesus responds, verse 38. How many loaves do you have? Go and see. When they had found out, they said 5 and 2 fish. I'll skip down to verse 44 real quick. And those who ate the loaves were 5,000 men. Yeah, I see that look. How in the world are 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish anchovies going to feed 5,000 people? In Matthew's gospel account of this story, he tells us there was 5,000 men plus women and children. So you're looking more like 10 to 15,000 people. With 5 croutons and 2 sardines? You gotta be out of your mind. Yeah, there ain't no way that we can feed that many people with 2 McFish sandwiches for McDonald's. It ain't going to work. It's not going to happen. And then Jesus kept acting strange. The scripture tells us that he had them sit in groups of 50 each. So that'd be about 150 to 200 groups just sitting around in this grassy area. They didn't know what was going on. Maybe they were having little small group discussions or something. But don't forget How many people were listening to the words of Jesus? Jesus had compassion on the wandering and the lost sheep. He began to teach them the truth. He had compassion on them because he was willing to provide more than just spiritual food. Here we go. Jesus wanted to teach his apostles and us today something extremely crucial. Like I said, this was done before yesterday. Verse 41. And taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, he looked up to heaven and said a blessing, and broke the loaves, and gave them to the disciples to set before the people, and he divided the 2 fish among them all. Jesus gave the people a crouton and a scale from the fish. Can you just feel the love and compassion that Jesus had for these people? A crouton and a scale off of a fish. The only way you could give that much to somebody. Remember how many people are in a group? 50 people eating off of one crouton. Yeah. It was so nice of him. Bless his heart. You ready to go to that picnic? Been out in that sun all day long? Listen to him talk all day long? To get a nice chop piece of a crouton and an even smaller piece of a scale from the fish? There's more to the story. Look at verse 42. Miracle is about to happen. And they all ate and were satisfied. Wow! Off of one crouton and a fish scale, God satisfied their hunger. That's impressive. That's really cool. They were satisfied. That would basically be the equivalent of us coming in here hungry and me giving you the elements for communion, and you eat that. Oh, man, I can't have another bite. I'm so satisfied. Oh, you don't believe that's the case? That's what it says. He broke it, he gave it to them, and they ate. They were satisfied. And while that's pretty impressive of a miracle, I want you to hear it from John's perspective. In John chapter 6, verse 12, he says, and when they had eaten their fill, they weren't just satisfied, they were full to the gills. Pun intended. He told his disciples, gather up the leftover fragments that nothing may be lost. So you mean to tell me, off of a crouton and a sardine, they ate till they were satisfied, they were full, and there were leftovers? See, that's exactly what happened. But how? How did that happen? So glad you asked. Because when God asks you to do something, to move outside of the box, outside of the normal, He will bless your actions. The picnic that Jesus called for was totally outside of the box. There ain't no way 15 5,000 people are going to be fed on 5 loaves of bread and 2 tilapia. Ain't happening. No extra money. People are hungry in a desolate place. And Jesus says, let's have a picnic, boys and girls. It's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. It ranks right up there. When I was little, we were trying to raise money for church camp. And instead of doing the typical fundraisers, like a bake sale or a car wash, no, we decided to do something really out of the box. We're going to sell eggs. No, we didn't have any chickens. Yeah, this gets even stranger. Now get this. This is how this works. I go up to a door. We're trying to raise money so that we can go to youth camp this summer. And we were wondering if you would like to donate an egg to our church so that we can go next door and sell it to your neighbor. You get the weird looks, I guess. So they give you an egg. You go to the next door neighbors. We're trying to raise money so that we can go to youth camp this summer. Your neighbor donated an egg to us so that we could sell it to you. Would you like to buy it? And whatever donation they give you is what you get. Then you go to the next door. Would you like to donate an egg so we can sell it to your neighbor? It's the dumbest thing. It would never work. And one Saturday afternoon, 15 kids at $250 a camper went to do this, and every single one of our camp fee was paid that one day by selling eggs that you didn't have to start with to somebody that's next door. We went to one lady's house and said, I just went to the store and bought some, so I don't need any, but here, I'll give you some money. One lady said, I don't know who came up with this, but this is the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. But, I messed up when I went to the store. So here's your carton of eggs. You can just sell them and you don't have to ask anybody else for them. And let me write you a check. Think outside of the box. And as you go, God blesses your work. What is God asking you to do today that seems completely out of the box? That pulls you out of your comfort zone? If you do it, and He told you to do it, I guarantee you, He will bless your action when you do it. The people weren't fed just because they sat down in groups. They weren't fed just because Jesus turned, they weren't full because Jesus turned the grass and the rocks into food. They were fed because the apostles did what He told them to do. Here's the fish. Here's the bread. Now go give it to them. And if they would have just stood there, yeah, no. The people would still be sitting there hungry, waiting for something. The people, nowhere in here does it say that He told them to have the people sit down for a meal. Nowhere does it say that Jesus addressed the crowd, said, I'm going to feed you now, so we need you to sit down. It just says He told them to have them sit down. He told the apostles, here is the bread, you go feed them. Nowhere does it say that the people knew what was going to happen. They were sitting expecting for something, but they didn't know what they were expecting. What if God is asking you to do something that is so out of the box, so out of the normal, that people are already waiting and expecting it? They just don't know what they're waiting for. But you are the one who's supposed to give it to them. Most of our biggest decisions that we will ever make in our lives will come before we ever feel prepared and ready. And fear will talk us out of even taking that risk. And as we get ready to close, I want to leave you with one final thought. When God gives you the resource, use them. When God gives you the resources, use this. The account of the feeding of the 5,000 is recorded in all 4 Gospels. But only John tells us where this food came from. The others, it said, you feed them. The others said that they brought the food. But only John tells us what happened. Verse 9 of John chapter 6 tells us there is a boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. But what are they for so many? The same thing that we ask ourselves. But there's so many. What could I possibly do? A boy. Someone under the age of 13. Because under Jewish custom, at 13 you become a man. It says boy, so he's 12 and under. That's where they found the food. The apostles didn't realize what was just about to happen. Notice what they said to Jesus. But what are they for so many? It's basically, here's some food, but Jesus, you can't do anything with them. We've seen you raise the dead, heal the sick, and even cast out demons. But this is too big of a job for even you. I mean, feeding this many people with 2 fish sandwiches, that's too big for even you. Are you waiting before you move because you're doing it out of wisdom? Or is it fear telling you that something better is about to happen? The reality is, it rarely ever does. Don't quit before you see God move. That first year that I went on a pastor's retreat, we went fishing. I wasn't too happy because every time I've gone fishing, I've either caught sticks or I've caught shoots. The only time I ever really was successful in catching fish was the little Playa Lake right behind the mall, where the little concrete ramp is. Go right there and you can catch all the goldfish you want. Me and Dad caught, I think, 4 or 5 5-gallon buckets full of them. It really made some parents happy when we were getting ready to leave. It was full, and he gave the whole bucket to this little kid. The kid was overjoyed. The parents, not so much. But I didn't like fishing. And we had to be up at 4 o'clock in the morning because we had to be at the lake by 5:30. I don't like mornings, especially if the sun's not up. If God wanted the sun to be up for me to see, he would have put it later in the day. But I get on the boat, get out there, we sit there and wait forever. It was about an hour and a half to 2 hours before we could even start fishing, because you have to wait for the lake to warm up, and then the fish to start swimming so you can fish. Said, all right, everybody start fishing. They start handing out the fishing poles. And everybody starts fishing, and I'm just sitting there. I had my pole. They're like, well, Jeremy, aren't you going to fish? Yeah, I'm waiting for the bait. Oh, don't worry about that. Just throw it in. There's no bait on this hook. Don't worry about it. They'll bite. No, they won't, but okay. Everybody else is doing it, so they're going to be a fool. I'll be a fool on the boat too. I'm just sitting there, and all of a sudden I get a bite. What I didn't know is above the hook is a flasher. And it moves back and forth in the water. The sun hits it, it reflects the same as scales on a fish do. The fish see it, they come and bite, thinking they're biting a fish, and they're on the hook. The end of a few hours, 6 people ended up catching 150 fish. From a guy who doesn't catch any fish to catching 15 fish. 16 technically, but I had to throw one back because that's not what we were fishing for, and it was half an inch too small. But if I would have just sat there and not fished, because this is stupid to throw a hook into the water and expect to catch a fish with nothing on it, I would have sat there and missed out on all the fun. When I went the next year, I was ready to go fishing. Let's go fishing. They handed us the pole. This time we were fishing for catfish, so they loaded the bait on there. I didn't wait. I'm ready to go. Because I knew what happened last time. See, when God gives us a resource, why don't we use it? He will bless it. When God tells us to do something that is out of the box, He will bless it when we act upon it. And we need to trust Him to show us the lost sheep so that we can have compassion and care and love for them. If He didn't care for these sheep, they would have never been fed. If we don't have care and compassion for the sheep, who's going to feed them? God, we thank You that You love us, that You have called us to a different way of doing things, that You have called us to live by faith and to walk by faith. And even when You ask us to do things that just seem really absurd and out of the box, may we have the faith to believe You and just to do what You tell us to do and watch You bless it because we're being obedient to You. May we use what You have given us to fill Your kingdom so that others will see that You truly are the way, the truth, and the life. In Your name we pray. Amen.